All right, here we go, gentlemen. We are on page Perek Tes Zayin Pasuk Chaf Hey. I want to get to the swallow up today. Tes Zayin Chaf Hey. Hi, gentlemen. Make yourselves comfortable. Page 824. Page 824. Okay. So we said yesterday that Dasan and Aviram are the perpetual. Here, sit over here. Don't leave this one open. Dasan and Aviram are the perpetual troublemakers, and in Pasuk Chaf Hey, nobody has gotten Moshe Rabbeinu's message yet, and then 5 lines from the bottom on page 824. So, Vayakam Moshe, Vayelech el Dasan v'Aviram. Moshe now goes to Dasan v'Aviram. Vayelchu echarav ziknei Yisrael. Moshe goes to Dasan v'Aviram. Now, yesterday we mentioned that Moshe had summoned Dasan v'Aviram to him. Moshe had summoned Dasan v'Aviram to him originally, because Moshe Rabbeinu, as a leader and as a king, whatever his status was, he's not allowed to. What do you call himself? To humble himself too much. But now we're at the moment of truth. So we're actually at a point of what we call pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh means it's a life-threatening situation. And for a life-threatening situation, you're going to have to do anything you can. Because it's life-threatening because Dasan and Aviram, because now Moshe Rabbeinu knows we're at the final showdown. So for Dasan, pikuach nefesh means life-threatening. So if a person is in a life-threatening situation, let's say on Shabbos, somebody's you could break Shabbos to save somebody's life. You could, if it's life-threatening, so somebody who's starving to death, they're going to have to eat non-kosher food. The only thing you're not allowed to do for life-threatening is idol worship, immorality, and murder. The person has to give up his life. So Moshe Rabbeinu, Vayakam Moshe v'yelech el Dasan v'Aviram v'yocha acharav ziknei Yisrael. The elders follow Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, most of the time in life, what people say is life-threatening isn't always life-threatening. The famous story where the stipler, Reb Chaim Kanievsky's father, he was in the Russian army. The stipler got drafted. In the old days, they got drafted. He was in the Russian army, and it was Shabbos, and the sergeant called him out for target practice. He said, "Okay, Kanievsky, shoot the rifle." Target, as the stipler said, "It's Shabbos. I don't shoot on Shabbos." So the sergeant started yelling at him. So the other people there said, "You better shoot because it's pikuach nefesh. They're going to kill you if you don't shoot the rifle." The stipler said, "I'm not shooting the rifle." So the sergeant stormed off. They brought back a major. He says, "Kanievsky, pick up the rifle and shoot." He says, "I'm not shooting." And everybody started saying, "You better shoot, it's pikuach nefesh." He says, "I'm not shooting a rifle." So the major started hollering at him. He stormed off and he brought back a colonel. He goes, "Kanievsky, pick up the rifle and shoot." He says, "I'm not shooting, it's Shabbos." So he clapped a pistol to his head. He said, "If you don't shoot the rifle, I'm going to blow your brains out." So the stipler turned to everybody and says, "Now it's pikuach nefesh." I mean that there's a certain point where it's life-threatening. And this is the point. Apparently, the legend is that he did it with a shinoi. He was a lefty, and he put it in his right hand, pulled the trigger, and hit a bullseye the first time anyway, so he doesn't have to. I don't know how much of it is but the point of this story, I don't even know how much of the story is 100% accurate. The point is not everything is pikuach nefesh. If you're on an airplane and they don't have your kosher meal, that's not pikuach nefesh. You're not going to die of starvation. You could eat bananas and apples for 12 hours. You're not going to die of starvation. It's not pikuach nefesh. If a person is starving to death, that's something else. There's a story about a guy, in America, when they came to America, say, people, hey, you get fired if you didn't work on Shabbos. So there's a guy who comes and he says to his wife, he's a Shomer Shabbos guy, and he says to his wife, "Listen, I can't get fired anymore. It's already pikuach nefesh." His wife, "I'm going to have to work on Shabbos." His wife says, "You're not working on Shabbos, Herschel." He says, "I have to work on Shabbos." And that's it. "I'm working on Shabbos. Tomorrow morning I'm going to work." So next morning, what does his wife do? His wife hid his clothing. So the next morning he wakes up and he wants to go to work. And he says to his wife, where my clothing? She said, "What do you need your clothing for?" He said, "I'm going to work." He said, "Why are you going to work?" He says, "Because it could be pikuach nefesh." So his wife says, "So what's the problem?" He says, "Well, I can't go in my pajamas." She says, "Hey, if it's pikuach nefesh, you would go in your pajamas." It's not pikuach nefesh, obviously. And he didn't go to work, and they ended up being shomer shad. Not everything is pikuach nefesh. Here, we're at the point where Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Okay, I'm going to have to swallow my pride, because if I don't, these people are going to die." And therefore, he approaches Dasan. He goes to Dasan and Aviram. Page 824. And then he says, "Vayedaber el ha'eda lemor," last chance. Suruna me al ohaleha noshim harashoim ela. Move away from the tents of these wicked people. I would not want to be Dasan and Aviram hearing Moshe Rabbeinu make this announcement. Ve'al tigu bechol asher lahem. Don't touch anything that belongs to them. Pentisafu bechol chatasam, lest you be drawn in because of their sin. They still not too late. It's still not too late. They could still turn around and say, okay, we were wrong, but that's one of the most difficult things in life to say. And I told you, the 3 words a woman wants to hear most. What are the 3 words your wife wants to hear most? And don't say I love you, because that means you've just been watching too much TV.
I am wrong.
I am wrong, right? That are the 3 words she wants to hear. There are 2. The second best is you were right. The best she wants to hear is I was wrong. Right, and which hurts, by the way, and if my wife has never heard it, obviously. Right? Why do they want to hear that? Because they suspect that men are immature babies who can't admit to being wrong, which is true. Right, and therefore they want to hear that. That means you're mature. By the way, it is immaturity. If you're wrong, admit you're wrong about anything in life. If you're wrong, you're wrong. I just said to my wife, don't criticize my choices. You were one of them. Right, so you know, it's like your wife says to you, you don't really plan on wearing that tie today, do you? They often have. I'm getting dressed, you're starting to walk toward your wife says, you don't really plan on wearing that tie, do you? I mean, if you wear that tie, I will absolutely jump off no, I will throw you off the roof. You're not really going to wear that tie, are you? No, this tie, no, me? This tie, no. This was my practice tie. I was going to absolutely change for sure. I was going to change. I was going to go back and change. Right? What's wrong with my tie? Nice tie. You picked it out. That was then. I changed my mind. Okay, so it's still not too late. Now, take a look at the next one thing Moshe said. Now, pay attention to this carefully. In Pasuk 28:29. On page 826. Vayomer Moshe. Second line from the top. Bizos teidud ki Hashem shlochani lasos es kol ma'asi beila. This is how you will know that God has sent me. You remember the accusation of Dasan and Aviram and Korach was that, hey, you made up all these appointments on your own. You appointed here, you can put it on this corner over here. You made up all the appointments on your own. That you appointed Aaron and yourself and everything else. And Moshe is saying, now I'm going to show you that I did not make anything up on my own. And remember, Moshe Rabbeinu is concerned about the entire Torah. If I made this up, what else did you make up? That's like when a boss walks into the office and something's not right. So bosses have been known to say, well, if this isn't right, what else isn't right? Sometimes something's disorganized or something's not being done properly. And a boss says, well, if you're not doing this right, what else aren't you doing right? So Moshe Rabbeinu says, hey, if I made this up, maybe I made up the whole Torah. The whole Torah is being threatened right now. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, okay, now I'm going to prove to you that I didn't do it on my own. Ki lo mi libi, it didn't come from my heart. That means there were 2 accusations here. Dasan and Aviram, but Korach said, look, there's 1 of 2 things happened. Either you made it up on your own, or, if it wasn't that bad, you wanted it this way, and therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God did what you wanted. Had you not wanted this, that God wouldn't have given you, told you to make these appointments. But either way, it's coming from you. That means their second accusation was, all right, Moshe, you didn't make it up on your own. But it's something you wanted, and since you're in good with God, so God then did it. But it's still your fault for wanting it. So Moshe Rabbeinu denies both. He says, number 1, I didn't make it up, and number 2, lo mi libi. It wasn't even in my heart. It wasn't even in my heart. That's a ridiculous claim also, that I manipulated God somehow. But even more than that, one of the commentators says something very sharp over here. He says, when you want to want it is a problem, right? We spoke yesterday about Korach. The very fact that you're chasing after it means you're disqualified. The fact that you want the honor means you're disqualified. You don't qualify for honor. I remember athletes used to say, sometimes the athlete would fetch, he'd say, I don't get the recognition I deserve. If you deserve it, you'll get it. And if you're asking people, okay, we recognize you. We recognize. What do you want us to do? What more would you like to do? You want to be on the All-Star team? What do you mean you don't get the recognition you deserve? You can't go and ask for recognition. When you go and ask for recognition, it's distasteful. It's like a rotten fish. Nobody like, I don't give you the recognition. Where you are, recognize me, everybody. Well, okay, we recognize you. You get recognition. There you go. So Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, Kilo mi libi. It wasn't in my heart. I was appointed as the leader. If you guys know what I went through with God, what did Moshe Rabbeinu say to God originally? No, please send somebody else. Ki lo mi libi. It did not come from me at all by any stretch of imagination. Now watch this, because this is the most stunning pasuk. They're all stunning, but this is the pasuk that should really freeze your blood. Moshe Rabbeinu says like this: Im kemos kol ha'adam yamusin elu. If these people die a natural death, ufkudas kol adam yipoked aleihem, and the standard way of death happens to them, lo Hashem shlachani, then you're right, Hashem didn't send me. You're right, I made it up. V'im bria yivra Hashem, but if Hashem creates a new thing, upatzas ha'adama espio bolosam, and then the earth swallows them up as kol asher lahem, v'yordu chaim shal, they go down alive into the depths, v'yadatem ki niyatzu Hashem, then you know these people provoked God. So what's Moshe Rabbeinu saying? He's saying, listen, if these people die a natural death, they just drop dead on the spot. So it's my bad. Hashem didn't send me, my fault. But if Hashem did send me, they're going to get swallowed up. Now where does that leave Korach and his people? The choices here are not great. You know, if they drop dead, so I was wrong. And if they get swallowed up, I was right. Yeah, well, where does that leave you? Your choices here are not really excellent as a Korach. And for Korach, you know, at a certain point, Korach and Dovid should look at each other. Hey guys, I think we might be in trouble over here. You know, what do you want? What are you looking for? So then it begs the question. The Chassam Sofer asks, well, 1 second. If it's true that Moshe Rabbeinu made it up, so why should they die? Moshe Rabbeinu says, if I made it up, they die. Natural death. Why do they deserve to die? Why should they die? If they're right, why should they die? If they're wrong, I understand. But if they're right, why should they die? You know what the answer is? What's the answer? The answer is, who told you to make a rebellion? You all have a rabbi in your community, don't you? You have a rabbi of the shul. You got a problem with the rabbi? Go talk to him. Make an appointment and talk to the rabbi. What do you got to get rile up the entire community against her? Oh, the rabbi did this. Oh, the rabbi did. Oh, get everybody. You're wrong, even if you're right. That's a rule in life. You're right, but you're wrong. Who told you to start a fight? Who started to get the community riled up? Who told you to make a rebellion? For the rebellion itself, you deserve to die. Oh, and if the accusation is false, then you're really toast. If the accusation is false, then you're really going to be in trouble. Right? That's what it means. Upekudas kol adam, upekudas kol adam, the commentaries say means, the reason is called poked. Poked means really to check. Pekudas kol adam means the old days apparently where they used to bury people. So they would bury them, and they had like a, what's it called? Not the earth. You didn't bury them in the earth. You buried them in a, what's it called? Sarcophagus? Yeah. No, it's like a dig. It's like there's a cave, and then they put them in, and they like a tomb, like a tomb mausoleum, something like that. What they used to do is they used to bury the people in one of these things. Then they would come back a few days later to check to make sure they're dead. Because you know sometimes there have been cases in history where people who they thought were dead were still alive. You know, a few days later, you know, next thing you know, the guy's alive. There was even a case in somewhere in South America. I know, probably Colombia. I don't know where, Peru, one of these places. You know, well, who knows? Look on a risk board and pick a country. But there was a case in Venezuela. There was a case where some guy died. He went missing, and then they found the body. They assumed it was him, and they had the funeral. And like he was gone for 3 months. They didn't find him. They had the funeral. They finally found the body. They had the funeral, and at the funeral he showed up. He was standing at the edge listening to the eulogy. And then eventually he said, oh, by the way, you got the wrong guy there. And the family was like, whoa, what are you doing here? You're dead. You know. And then the guy showed up, and I remember his mother was quoted as saying, yeah, things like this don't happen every day. Yeah, most people are horizontal, not vertical at their own funeral. Most people are. I knew a guy like one of these funny old guys. This is like that guy in the back of the shul who always makes jokes with the young guy, the little bald guy. His name is always Marv or something like that. And this guy once was at a family gathering. And so he was like the family. This guy was a family gathering. So he took a bouquet of roses and a bouquet of flowers. He laid down on the couch. He said, "Okay, guys, it's my funeral. I want to hear the eulogies. Make it good. I want to hear what you're going to be saying." And he laid down on the couch. Everybody had to get up and give a eulogy over this guy. So the Moshe Rabbeinu says, even if you're wrong, even if you're right, you're wrong, and if you're wrong, then you're going to get swallowed up in the earth. Now let's understand this very well. Why is it that the punishment of Korach? So let's read a few psukim, then we'll come back and analyze it. He says, and if they're wrong, they're going to end up going down alive into the depths. Pasuk Lamed Aleph, 31, 8 lines from the top. Vayihi kechaloso ledaber es kol advarim ha'ela. Moshe finished saying it, Vatiboka ha'adama asher tachteim. The earth underneath them opened up. Vatiftach ha'oretz es pia. Now pay attention carefully, gentlemen. The earth opened its mouth. Vativla osam ve'es bateim. It swallowed them and their houses. Ves kol ha'adam lekorach. All the people that were with Korach in the rebellion. Ves kol ha'rechush, and all the property. Now the Torah says the earth opened its mouth. The Medrash says it wasn't an earthquake, that the earth cracks and they fall in. The earth opened up and there was a mouth-like thing that swallowed them. According to the Medrash, there was even a gulping sound, right? Didn't 7-Eleven once have Big Gulp? Remember their drink called the Big Gulp? This was the original. This was the original Big Gulp over here. And they're all gulp. Now imagine you're standing there watching this happening, and all of a sudden you, right? The earth is making a gulping sound. And there's one medrash that says that the earth, it was very individual. It wasn't one crack. It was one crack under each person from Korach. It wasn't like one crack. It was like under this guy and under that guy and under the other. All of a sudden, and not only it was cracked, it wasn't a big crack. It was a human-sized crack. They were slowly being drawn into the ground. Yeah, how do you like that? It's bad. Miguel, it should be avoided when you have spare time. They're being drawn into the ground, and as they're being drawn into the ground, they're starting to yell, Moshe emes v'torah. But too late. Too late. You're already going down, and you're like, woo! Right? He's disappearing, right? And there they go down, and it's perfect size for their bodies, for the contours of their bodies. What the Medrash says. Yeah. Enjoy your banana, Blake. Yeah. Perfect size for the contours of the body, and they're being vacuumed into the earth, right? Which is bad. And they're all yelling. And at that point, I guarantee everybody's yelling, whoa, Moshe, no, we were just kidding. We're wrong. Too late. You should have done tshuva a moment earlier. You blew it by a second. And they're swallowed alive into the ground. Now, hold all the questions for a second. Why is it that this is the punishment? That the earth opens up, there's a mouth that swallows them in. Vayerdu, one more pasuk. Vayerdu heim v'chol asher lehem chayim she'ola. They and all of theirs go down alive into the depths. Vatechas aleim ha'oretz, the earth covers them up. Vayovdu mitoch hakol, they're gone from the congregation. So first of all, those skeptics who say, well, it was an earthquake. There's even an opinion. Moshe Rabbeinu planted dynamite in the earth that go off just at the proper time and so on. Well, that explains why the earth opens up. Doesn't explain why it would close up. And not only it closed up, they were absorbed, sucked into the earth in such a way that the earth covered over, and there was no indication that there had been an earthquake. Usually after an earthquake, there's a, what's it called? There's a fault line or something that still remains. Nothing showed. It covered over. There was no indication whatsoever that a man named Korach and these people ever existed. Nothing. His tent, his house, the Medrash says, even a needle, not a needle of Korach remained. Everything got kind of vacuumed right into this thing, and they're gone. They're gone. Hold for a few minutes. They're gone. What's going on here? So why is it a mouth? Why does the earth develop a mouth? What's the most basic reason? Why do you think the most basic reason? That there was a mouth? They spoke. They opened their mouths in the wrong place. You open your mouth, Hashem pays you back where you get what you deserve. You open your mouth, you get swallowed by a mouth of the earth. Number one. Number two, if you remember, there's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says, can we make it just a little cooler, gentlemen? Can we make it just a little colder? Thanks. How to do it, I don't know. As Winston Churchill said, I don't care. Remember Winston Churchill's famous quote? I don't care how you do it, but you must sink the Bismarck. You remember that? There was a movie, Sink the Bismarck. Didn't you guys ever see anything cultural? Right? No. Even didn't have it on Discovery Channel or anything. Nothing. So, there's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says that you should daven have a mispalo bishloma shel malchus. Daven for the welfare of the ruling government. Why? The Mishnah says she'il mole mora'ah, if not for the fear of the government, of the fear of the central ruling force. Ish esrei eyu chaim below, people would swallow each other up alive. What happens every time there's a blackout, or every time there's some sort of anarchy, where there's no centralized government, where there's no fear of law and order? What's happening in Venezuela today, gentlemen? All right? I don't know what. All right? Venezuela is a really not good place to be. Right? There's no law and order. People are getting held up left, right, and center. You do whatever you want. It's Hefker. So when California is not, I was just saying California is not as bad. It's getting there. But the what do you call it? But Ish Israel, people swallow each other alive. Every time there's ever a blackout, what happens? Looting and killing, and there's anarchy. So what did Korach really want? Korach was coming along and saying, hey, we don't need anybody in charge because we're all equal here. Oh, you don't want any central force in charge? What's going to happen when nobody's in charge? When nobody's in charge, people swallow each other up alive. Ah, that's what you were looking for, a situation where you were going to create a situation where people swallow each other up alive. Therefore, mida keneged mida, which means quid pro quo, you and your people get swallowed up alive, first of all. Second of all, by the way, there's an interesting halachic question here. Could Korach's wife, well, she got swallowed up, but those who got swallowed and were married and their wives were not part, his wife was part of the rebellion. But those who got swallowed up whose wives were not part of the rebellion, could they remarry? Are they allowed to remarry? Because if a man dies, his wife can remarry. But if a man disappears and he's alive, right, if we don't have evidence of him, right, his wife's what's called an aguna. An aguna means a woman is in chains. She's in shackles because she doesn't have a divorce. Her husband's not alive. We don't know where he is. And what does it say over here? They got swallowed up. It never says they died. What does it say? It says they were swallowed up alive. So this is actually discussed among the poskim about what would be the halacha over here. Theoretically, what would be the halacha? By the way, do you know it's also discussed about Eliyahu HaNavi? What happened to the prophet Eliyahu? He got in a flaming chariot and went up to heaven, right? He went into Shemayim alive. What was the status of Eliyahu HaNavi's wife? An interesting question, isn't it? What was the status? I'll tell you. You want to hear unbelievable. What were you going to ask, Baruch? Correct, and therefore their wives could not get married. That was one of the poskim said that Korach said these people, these women, obviously cannot remarry because it says openly they're still alive. They're in a very inconvenient place. They're under the stands at a ballpark. You know, it's a very inconvenient place. Can't see the ball game. You're out of sight. They're under the earth. They're alive. They're alive, and not only they're alive, the Gemara says that Rabbi Bar Chana, was traveling through the desert. And he said an Arabian tour guide of some sort. And the guy said to him, come, I'll show you where Korach's people got swallowed up. So he takes him and he sees two holes in the ground and there's smoke coming out of these holes. And he takes a spear and he takes a clump of what do you call it? A clump of wool, and he drenches the wool and puts it on the end of the spear, and he sticks the spear into the hole and comes out, and the wool, which is drenched wool, comes out singed, meaning it's hot down there. Right? It's very hot down there. And he puts his ear to the hole, probably not too close so it didn't get burnt, but he hears Korach and his people are down there yelling, Moshe emes v'toroso emes. Yeah, Jonathan, should be avoided at all costs. And he hears they're yelling Moshe emes. By the way, the tradition that we have, have you ever seen that on Shmini Atzeres when we do the Hakafas? When we dance with the Torah, what do they do when they start saying Moshe emes v'toroso? What do people do? Moshe emes. You know, they throw the kids up in the air. Did you ever see that? You never saw that? You never threw kids up in the air? Boy, you haven't lived, right? Yeah, they start dancing, and everybody says, they say Moshe emes. Everybody starts jumping up and down. So the reason they do that, the tradition started because the assumption is that Korach and his people down below, when they're saying Moshe emes v'toroso, they're probably jumping up and down because they're standing on hot coals. So they're probably jumping up and down as they say Moshe emes v'toroso emes. So that's why we have this tradition. We jump up and down. And Moshe emes. You didn't see that when they do that? None of you saw that they jump? Have you ever been to Hakafas? Ovadia, you never saw them jumping up and down. And Moshe emes v'toroso. That's where it comes from. It comes from Moshe. It comes from Korach and his people. Hold for 1 second. There's a deeper idea here, and this is really the one that's most central to us. Why does Korach have to be swallowed up? To the point that there's no evidence that the man existed. There's no evidence at all that there was ever a man named Korach or his people. Why should he be swallowed up into the earth? Why that punishment of all punishments? So Rabbi Dessler explains, when you're jealous of somebody, which Korach was, here's a man who's got everything and he's insanely jealous. When you're jealous of somebody for any reason, whether it's his talents, whether it's his abilities, whether it's his possessions, jealousy means that instead of focusing on yourself, you're focusing on somebody else. And if somebody has something you don't have and you're unhappy as a result, that means in your own mind you feel that at a certain level you don't exist. I don't have, if I'm jealous of your car, then my car, whatever it is, I feel like I don't even have a car. The car doesn't exist. If I'm jealous of your position, because you're a Kohen Gadol and I'm a Levi, and I've got my job, I've got my life, my way of serving God, and I'm meant to fulfill my potential with who I am, with my abilities and my talents and my capabilities and my challenges. And all I'm doing is I'm looking at you. That means I feel I don't exist. So, as the proverbial father said, all fathers have said, when you walk around the house fetching and whining, what do your fathers say? Want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about. No, never heard that from your dad, right? You want to kvetch? You want to whine? I'll give you something to whine about. HaKadosh Baruch Hu works the same way. Oh, you want to know it not exist? I'll give you something not to exist about. You feel you don't exist, Korach? You feel you got nothing because you can't be the Kohen Gadol? I'll show you what it is to have nothing. I'll show you what it is to not exist. So the earth opens up and Korach gets swallowed down. Now you know what it is to not exist. Everything we get from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we get Mida Kedeged Mida. What are you going to ask, Mayor?
No, the Rabbi responded.
Okay. Somebody had a question. Yeah, go ahead, Rabbi.
I think the Midrash says that two of Korach's sons.
It's a pasuk. It says the pasuk in the Torah says "Uvnei Korach lo mesu." It says Korach's sons did not die. His children.
Did they not die, and the rest of them that were saying Torah.
So there is actually those that died, according to most opinions, were people who were involved in the rebellion. Korach's sons did tshuva. And therefore they did not die. Before the earth, you got to do tshuva before. Once you're swallowed up, it's too late.
Yeah, but I heard that they were going down already, and
the words of the Gemara is that a ledge was created for them in Gehenna, but it's an esoteric statement, not clear exactly what it means. The standard opinion is they did tshuva. Anybody who did tshuva did not get swallowed up. There are opinions that even babies got swallowed up. Even infants and babies got swallowed up. Why should they? I'll get you 1 second. Why should that be? And the answer is that if somebody has a contagious disease, so everybody who comes in contact with them also has to be quarantined because it's got a contagion, whether fault or not fault. There's a contagious disease called being a contentious person, being toxic, right? There's a contagious disease where there is always a rabble rouser. In every shul, in every community, in everywhere you go, there will be the person who likes to start a fight for the sake of fighting. Right? We all have, by the way, we all have a little bit, some or more or a little bit of that in us. If you've ever seen a situation, I'm sure you guys in college or in some situation where two guys are getting upset with each other and they're about to go at it, then there's a third guy who gets in and says, come on, fellas, and you're sitting there thinking, get out of here, will you? Get out of here? What do you stop? No, let him go. And what do you get? That means we got some Korach in us. Right? We want to see some action. Never saw a fight in shul? Never saw a fight in shul? Even, what's that? I've said, absolutely. And it's certainly more interesting than the Torah reading. Some guy's yelling at the gabbai and somebody's trying to calm him down. Get out of here, will you? Listen, the guy's yelling. Let's see some fun over here. That's Korach. That's it. That's just Korach in us. Sometimes you just want to fight for the sake of fighting. You want to make it's the principle. Yeah, the principle that matters is I want some action. I'm not willing to let it go. I'm just not willing to let it go. The guy took my parking space. Then he pulled out of my. I'm going to let him know. I can't let it go. Just let it go. Is there an expression? Get past it. That's also one of the modern expressions. Get past it. Just get past it. No, I'm not going to let it go. That's Korachism. And that's why the Torah says later on there's actually a prohibition. Don't be like Korach. Don't be like Korach. By the way, I wanted to tell you, that Rabbi Bradowitz once spoke, and he mentioned, this is unbelievable, he mentioned a documented incident, okay? Take it for what it's worth. I'm telling you what he said, and it's documented. I've heard the incident before, and he mentioned it in the base medrash here. There was one of the 16th century, the leader of the greatest 16th century, what's called the Maharshal. The Maharshal was a rav of a certain town. And in this town, there was a woman who was dying. And often, she had when she was ill, she was dying. And often what happens in these situations is very emotional. The surviving spouse will often promise or swear that they were not going to remarry. Because they're both, it's very emotional, very emotionally draining. And she says, what are you going to do with her? I said, I can never marry anybody but you, or whoever it is. The wife could say it to the husband. So the man swore to his wife he's never going to marry anybody else. And then the wife died. And a short while later, a year later, people suggested a shidduch for the husband. The husband who was no longer married, his wife had died, somebody suggested a match for him. So he had a problem because he swore to his wife. So he went to the Maharshal. And he asked the Maharshal, is it permissible for him to marry another woman now? Because he swore to his wife that he wouldn't. The Maharshal ruled, based on certain principles, the Maharshal ruled and even wrote out, he ruled that the man is allowed to remarry. Okay. Shortly after he remarried this woman, then the man himself became sick. And a short while later, he died. So the new wife came to the Maharshal and she said, it's your fault. Because he swore to his other wife he wouldn't marry him because you allowed him to remarry. He remarried, and now look what happened to me. So the Maharshal went home and he reviewed his logic, he reviewed his sources, he went through it again, and he determined that his ruling had been correct. Now I'm telling you what Rabbi Bradowitz said, and this is documented in the annals of the city. They used to keep ledgers in the town. I think it might have been, I'm not sure if it was Krakow or where he was the Rav. I don't remember. They used to have the ledgers, the elders of the town used to keep actual ledgers, records of what went on in the town. According to the town records which they found, the Maharshal then went to the cemetery and he took the document that he had written up where he registered the correct answer and he put it in the grave and the man came back to life. And then he went back and he and his wife continued living together. I don't know if they made a chuppah and kedushin again. I'm not sure if he remarried her, but they lived together. Then the wife comes to the Maharshal again. A short time later she says, something happened. I don't love him anymore like I did before he died. Right? Something changed. Right? While he was dead, something changed. So the Maharshal, some women are hard to please. Listen, I brought him back to life for you. Yeah, but that wasn't the color that I wanted. It's like buying your wife cabinets. I wanted orange. This is an off orange. As long as it keeps the food equipment in there, it's good enough for me. No, get the whole new. So the Maharshal, she says, but I don't love him anymore. So the Maharshal davened that she should have a change of heart, and then she came back a little while. She said, wow, now I love him. So the elders of the town wrote in the town journal, they wrote the second miracle was bigger than the first miracle, because to bring somebody back to life is nowhere near as difficult as getting somebody a change of heart. How do you like that? To change people, that's a challenge. To bring somebody to life, that happens periodically. Big deal, To get them to change, to get anybody to change anything in life, that's a miracle. Boy, is that ever true. That's what he reported. Okay, I can't tell you that. I'm just telling you what he reported. Take it for what it's worth. Yeah.
Is praying for someone to have a change of heart not encroach on their free will?
Excellent question. Excellent question. And the answer is that this is a question that many people ask. Let's say parents have a child, they want the child to be a little more God-fearing. Can they daven for such a thing? What about his free will? And the answer is that what they're davening for is that God should create the external situation which will then help his free will to be activated. So you could daven that I should become wealthy, right? Now, how am I going to become wealthy? I still have to choose to make the right investment, right? So you could daven that I should become, that may not be good. You should daven that I should become more God-fearing, right? So that on the day, what's going to happen? On the day that I decide to go to a club, which certainly doesn't enhance anybody's fear of God, on that day, the car should break down. And that'll happen because of it. And therefore, since the car breaks down, I just turn around and go to the base medicine and learn Baba Kama. Right? That could happen. Or I decide to go daven or something like that. That you could daven, your davening affects the external situation, but doesn't affect my free will. Good question. Miguel, that's a good question, don't you? You know what a definition of a good question is?
Good answer.
If I have an answer. Yeah, then it's a good question. If I don't have an answer, then it's a technical question. It's irrelevant. Yeah, Miguel, go ahead.
With the 250 men that were still able to bring an offering, I guess, why weren't they sucked into the earth?
Because they were drawn into it by Korach. Korach was the instigator. But Dasan were an instigator. They were drawn into it by Korach. They weren't the instigators. They burned. Listen. It's like my dentist said before giving me a shot in the roof of my mouth. I once had to have when I had my wisdom teeth pulled. So he had to give me an injection in the roof of my mouth. I didn't like what that sounded like. So I said to him, "Is this going to hurt?" So he says to me, "Well, you're going to feel some pressure." I know what that means. Feels that pressure means you're going to have more pain now than you could possibly imagine that registers on a pain meter. So he gives me this injection, and he's giving me an injection in the roof of my mouth. And I'm going like that. It felt like the needle was going out my skull. And I finishes, I'm tearing, and he pulls out the thing and goes, "Yeah, that's no walk on the beach." Right? Yeah, shkoyach, buddy. Yeah, no walk on the beach. So they didn't have a walk on the beach either. You know, they burnt to death.
They turned away.
You're right, but they burnt. The Torah says, but the fire consumed them because they brought the ketoris, which they're not allowed to bring. And not only that, there's an opinion that Korach got both. Korach was one of the bows who were swallowed up, and he was also not only he burnt and was swallowed up.
Then how could they then, because they said don't touch anything that is theirs.
No, that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to the rest of the people. Moshe Rabbeinu said that to the Jewish people. Don't touch it. Nobody go near them.
But it's something like the pan that they had that offered the fire.
That was the guys who, and so then later on, the pans survived. They used the pan, they put it in the Mishkan. He's talking about their personal possessions. So what do you call it? Now, why did Moshe Rabbeinu make this a public announcement? Why did this have to be? Why did this have to be such a public, dramatic display? Because of the threat to the entire Torah. It has to be once and for all, and that's why we never find this again. We never find in history that Moshe Rabbeinu's authority is challenged by anybody. Nobody challenges Moshe Rabbeinu. He's off limits. He's not challenged. That's already established. And since Moshe Rabbeinu is not challenged, then the Torah is not challenged. And people who do challenge Torah, and people have tried to fabricate Torah and that sort of thing, they're considered Korachs. They're outside the camp. They're outside. They're no longer part of the camp. Okay? Now, let's go on.
So all of Klal Yisrael saw the actual swallowing?
They saw it. Look at the next pasuk. V'chol Yisrael shitzivoseiim nosu lekolam. Everybody ran. Ki amru pentiv leim haaretz. They said, whoa! I mean, if you saw this happening, you'd run. Some say they ran towards them. The Hatzalah guys ran towards them, right? But some people, but most people run away. The eish yatsa me'es Hashem, and a fire came out. V'tochal es chamisha v'sayim v'akrivi aktoris. And then the fire came out, and it swallowed up the guys who brought the Ketores. Okay, now there is an opinion. Now watch. One of the Hasidic masters says that if it says, take a look at the words again. It says v'chol Yisrael asher sivusayim nosu likolam. Nasu likolam means they ran. Literally, likola means to their voice. So one of the Hasidic masters says this is a generational message. It's a generational message. What do Jews do when they have trouble? What do you do when you have trouble? You run to the voice. Meaning which voice? Kolam, the voice of tefillah. This is a generational message. It's not obviously the literal meaning. The generational message is when Jews have what do you call it? You have trouble in life. What do we do when we have trouble? You daven. Obviously, you have to do the responsible thing and take whatever responsible means there are. But at the end of the day, nosu lekolam. There always has to be done. There's trouble, so the Jews start diving. It's a remez. It's not certainly not the Pashup shot, but the 250 men die. Now there is an opinion that Korach burnt. He was one of the 250. There's an opinion that he was swallowed. The Gemara says he was part of both. So I saw one of the commentaries said, why does Korach have to? Korach himself had both punishments. I don't know if it means that he was burnt and he was still alive when I don't know exactly what it means. But I saw one of the commentaries says, and again, it shows that you get what you deserve. Imagine the 250 guys are burning. And they say, hey, how come Korach isn't burning? He's the guy who dragged us into this. And he's our leader. So God says, yeah, you wanted to lead? Okay, now you lead them. Now you can lead the 250 men. And what about being swallowed? Yeah, you wanted to swallow? So now you have to lead the swallower too. You wanted to be a leader, didn't you? Good, now I'm going to let you be a leader on both sides. You can lead the guys who get burnt, you can lead the guys who get swallowed, right? You wanted to be a leader, you get it. The rule is you get what you deserve in life. And therefore, Korach, we see later on, eventually, which pasuk is it? Where Hashem says that there will no longer, we'll be done in a second. Where is the pasuk that says "V'lo yeh kekorach v'cha'adoso"? There's actually a prohibition to be somebody who's a rabble rouser. There's a prohibition to be somebody who starts trouble. You've heard of the Chafetz Chaim? You've heard of the Chafetz Chaim? The Chafetz Chaim had a son-in-law, Rav Aaron Cohen. Rav Aaron Cohen moved to Israel eventually, and he settled in. He asked the Chafetz Chaim, where in Israel should I live? When I live in Eretz Yisrael, Chafetz Chaim said to him, it doesn't matter. Wherever you live is Eretz Yisrael. There's Kedusha. You should live there. He moved to Sharei Chesed, which was a very, very religious neighborhood. And after a while, one day, he disappeared, and the people were looking for him. The people were looking for this Rav. He and his family moved. They moved to some other neighborhood. So somebody finally tracked him down. They said to him, why did you move? He said, because where I was in Shari Chesed, we were very happy. But then something happened political. There was a tumult in the shul. There started two factions. They started fighting with each other. And my father-in-law, the Chafetz Chaim, said, it doesn't matter where you live. Just stay away from any sort of machlokas, any sort of fighting. And therefore, once the fighting started, fighting is like a fire. It consumes people, and you stay away from fire. It's a rule in life, gentlemen. It's a rule in life. You may be right. And most of the time, you may be right. Nothing, rarely is it worth the fight. Rarely is it worth. The consequences of being right and fighting are worse, in most cases, than the consequences of being wrong. You're right. You're right, but you're fighting, and it's not worth fighting. And in general, you know, when you get along with your parents, getting along with your wife, getting along with your kids, getting along with the community, getting along with people in the yeshiva, walk away from the fight. One of the hardest things to do. One of the hardest things to do in life is to walk away. That's the best thing to do. Don't they teach you in martial arts? The real strength in martial arts is to walk away from the fight. Isn't that true? Yeah? Then you turn around and kick the guy who's not looking. But the real strength, you give him a cheap shot just to keep him honest. But the real strength is to walk away from it. And I used to tell my kids, when my kids would complain, one is well, he hit me. Why'd you hit him? Because she said something. I said, you're both wrong. You were wrong for saying it, and you were wrong for reacting. Yeah, but she started, right, and you continued. That was also wrong. You started. What I used to do, my daughter had a real sharp mouth. My son had a good fist, right? So, but she had a mouth. And I used to say to her, your words are as painful as his punch, right? But she would be upset because sometimes he would start up. And I couldn't, he'd beat, once in a while, which is what sisters are for, but he, once in a while he'd beat her. So what I used to do is I said, listen, I'm responsible for your well-being, and I have no way of stopping him from hitting you. So what I'm going to do is, I'm chayev. I'm paying you, and I'd give her money, 5 shekels. That he hated. She's making money, I hit her, and now she's making, so he stopped hitting her, right? If the two of them were smart, they would have made a partnership. Obviously they would have put on a show and take me for a ride, but that they didn't do. But that was the only thing, the only leverage I had over him was to pay her. But I told her, your words are as bad as his, and you're wrong for responding. You're both wrong. You're both wrong. You can both be wrong in life. That happens. If there's a fight, you're both wrong. Walk away from the fight. All right, I'll see you guys.